Good morning, everyone. My name is Tony Nash, and I will be your host for today. Before we begin, I would like to call everyone's attention to a number of housekeeping messages. Please turn off your mobile phones or put them into silent mode for the duration of the conference. Please wear your name tags throughout the conference so that we know who you are and can support you in any way that we can. Coffee breaks will be served in the foyer on really all sides around the doors. So when you step out, please just grab the quickest coffee station. Please complete the evaluation form and return it to the registration counter at the end of the conference. Please, this is very, very important for us that these come in. So if you can submit it before the end of the conference, we would really appreciate it. Please do not leave your personal belongings unattended. Smoking is not allowed within the premises. With regard to asking questions, ushers will be circulating with microphones and standing around the hall. So when you have a question, first of all, everyone who asks a question today, we're going to give a round of applause to encourage you to ask questions. And second of all, please just tap them and call them over to ask a question. Next, parking rates will be a flat 16 ringgit with validation. So please don't forget to get your parking tickets validated. And finally, for our Muslim delegates, prayer rooms are on level 5 of the hotel. For any queries or assistance during the conference, kindly speak to any of our colleagues around the hall. We're happy to support you in any way we can. There are also people out in the ballroom who can support your needs throughout the conference. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we seek your cooperation to switch off your mobile phones or put them on silent mode in order to not disrupt the proceedings of today's event. Thank you very much for your cooperation. At the moment, I'd like to announce the arrival of Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Azman Hashim, Chairman of the Asian Institute of Chartered Bankers. And Mr. Tay K. Luan, Chief Executive of the Asian Institute of Chartered Bankers. Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Azman Hashim, Chairman of the Asian Institute of Chartered Bankers, Mr. Tay K. Luan, Chief Executive of the Asian Institute of Chartered Bankers, distinguished guests, our esteemed panel of speakers and moderators, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you and welcome to today's event. On behalf of the Asian Institute of Chartered Bankers, I would like to I would like to welcome everyone present here today for joining us today at the Global Banking Conference 2015, themed The New Banking Paradigm, Disruptions, Risks, and Opportunities. We'd also like to thank our sponsors. Firstly, our main sponsor, Maybank. Silver sponsor, Credit Guarantee Corporation. Bronze sponsors, Ambank Group, Afin Holdings Berhad, Bank Rakyat, and Chagamas. Supporting partners, Standard Chartered, Prabadanan Insurance Deposit Malaysia, International Compliance Association UK, supporting organizations, Asian Institute of Finance, Securities Industry Development Corporation, Association of Banks Malaysia, Malaysian Investment Banking Association, Human Resources Development Fund, Institute of International Auditors Malaysia, and Emerio. And finally, our media partner, The Edge. Thank you very much for all the sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, the Asian Institute of Chartered Bankers is the professional body for the banking and financial services industry. Previously known as the Institute of Bankers Malaysia, AICB continues its founding tradition of upholding and ensuring high professional standards. Its development and delivery of education and learning for both institutional and individual members. AICB remains the center of excellence through the delivery of professional services and innovations. To this end, the mission of AICB is to ensure its service propositions are aligned to industry needs, attuned to cultural changes, as well as the evolving landscape of the financial world. The theme of this conference is the new banking paradigm, disruptions, risks, and opportunities, and this is the flagship conference of the Institute. We have 19 speakers from all over the world, some of whom aren't even here yet, and we're awaiting their arrival, and we have delegates from 15 countries. So this has been an amazingly successful event. This event is 3 times oversubscribed from the original plan. So, bravo to Malaysia for the interest in risk and the interest in chartered banking standards. So well done. We have over 400 professionals in the room today. This is a 2-day conference. Yesterday, we had a half-day workshop on stress testing where we had 300 banking professionals in the room learning about stress testing. It was an amazing event. Today, day 2, is a full conference with 1 special address, a lunch and talk, 1 keynote speaker, and 3 plenary sessions. So we've got a full day ahead. The event is industry relevant and caters to bankers both locally and internationally. It addresses the most current issues in risk, compliance, and ethics, focused on the standards of professionalism in banking both locally and internationally. So, without further delays, to begin today's proceedings, I would like to call upon Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Azman Hashim, Chairman of the Asian Institute of Chartered Bankers, to give his welcome remarks. Tan Sri?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished speakers, moderators, and guests, and of course, participants, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to everyone. I extend a warm welcome to everyone for today's inaugural Global Banking Conference 2015, with the theme, the new banking paradigm, disruptions, risks, and opportunities. To our guests from overseas, special welcome or selamat datang. We managed to take away the haze for you. This morning's sky is not as blue as yesterday's, but We managed to get the haze away for you for a couple of days, we hope. I am confident participants will have the opportunity to listen to the many insightful remarks from the, I think, 19 speakers, as mentioned, from at home and abroad. Also invaluable will be the comments and insights from you, the participants, on the different international perspectives on banking issues at this Global Banking Conference, which was previously called the Risk Management Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, today's conference focuses on the new banking paradigm, disruptions, risks, and opportunities. These topics are especially appropriate to the Malaysian context and should help to enable Malaysian banks to become more resilient against any unexpected events, no black swans. The banking sector has also become more complex, operating in a highly regulated environment, and the competitiveness of banks is defined by their ability to innovate and maximize their assets. The banks have also invested in human capital to ensure their risk and compliance practices and policies are established in order to keep pace with a fast-changing environment. Ladies and gentlemen, we would all agree that our industry is facing significant disruption from a variety of sources. This intermediation in the marketplace has affected many parts of our traditional and in the past profitable businesses. We need to respond urgently as the entrants move into our sector, engage easily with our clients, and offer alternative services, some of which are more flexible than what we have traditionally offered. Bitcoin is one example of a major disruptor in the marketplace, but others, often by stealth, quietly, are doing the same. Why buy your foreign currency from a bank when you can buy it from an actor? This is one advert that appeared in the London Underground. That's an example. Adverts like this really should be a wake-up call for all of us. Innovation is happening around us, and we need to respond both by being innovative ourselves and also enhancing our ability to predict what our customers want. Apple is a company that has led the development of the handheld device sector, and we therefore need to ensure that we strengthen our position as the dominant innovator in financial services. No longer are we the single provider in the market, and customers are starting to exercise their right to make different choices. In the UK, account switching is being actively promoted by regulators and the government to create greater customer choice and also to encourage a more competitive banking market. Ladies and gentlemen, the reputation of bankers have been dented. Actually, more appropriate wording is severely damage, probably more appropriate. Particularly after the subprime mortgage crisis in the US in 2008. Which is still affecting and haunting the world today after so many years. Then, the biggest banks, because of greed mainly, set aside good ethics, good conduct, even mis-sell things. It was insider trading, even fraud. Even the rating agencies played along with them. However, with every threat comes opportunity. Lord Adair Turner, when he was chairman of the Financial Services Authority in the UK, asked a fundamental question. What role do banks play in society? Although many dismiss this as the musings of a regulator, it is an important question that we need to ask ourselves. Actually, I want to also say, we need banking with a heart. Think about that. I'm a banker, but it is now probably one of the least popular occupations in contemporary society. The number of MBA students who are choosing to enter financial services have dropped by a third since the financial crisis in the US, 2008. In the emerging markets like Malaysia, the importance of talent, the importance that talent plays in the industry is crucial. We need to be cognizant of our history, but forward-looking enough to make the necessary changes that our shareholders and society at large expects. The opportunity to look at the role of bankers in society is a pressing one. Malaysia, along with other markets, is starting to believe that being a banker must stand for something. Hence, we are launching the first Fellows of the Asian Institute of Chartered Bankers this Friday. Let me take this opportunity today to remind us today that a chartered professional is a person who has gained a significant level of competence in a particular field of work, and as such has been awarded a formal credential by an organization in recognition of this. It is considered a status of professional competency, and the chartered standing is awarded by professional bodies. I think this approach of utilizing the chartered status of bankers can help to strengthen our role in society, give each of us confidence in our peers, and go some way to answer the question of what role we can play in society. Competence is only the start. Knowledge can be developed through high-quality training institutions, and this was our thinking when we established the Asian Banking School. The final piece of this jigsaw is behavior, the soft side, the qualities. Bankers have been found wanting in the past, especially during the I mentioned U.S. financial crisis in 2008. But if we are serious about our role in society, then we can help promote professionalism across the industry. This is something that I feel strongly about, and in fact, I was asked by Bank Negara Malaysia and the Securities Commission to chair the Financial Services Professional Board, a voluntary industry-wide initiative that is dedicated to the development and advocacy of professional and ethical standards. The Financial Services Professional Board, FSPB, was launched in 2014 and will be officially launching the Code of Ethics for the financial services industry next month. This code aims to raise the bar for professionalism and ethics across the financial services industry to help restore, maintain, and enhance public trust. It is hoped that a code of ethics will be accepted, not only in Malaysia, but internationally. Some questions we might like to contemplate is what organizations need to do in order to create a strong culture of professionalism and ethics. And what role should leaders of these organizations play to create this culture? Ladies and gentlemen, over the next 2 days, we will look at risk. You have done 1 day already. For today, you will look at risk, professionalism, culture, and the future of finance. We are at a crossroads and regard the future of our sector, with regard to the future of our sector, and although the journey may be occasionally rocky or bumpy, I'm sure that we will make the right choices to uphold our role in society and benefit our future generations. Thank you, and have an enjoyable conference.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to witness the launch of the AICB's new addition to their suite of professional qualifications. The Bank Risk Management, or BRM qualification, is the only bank risk management qualification in the world and goes beyond the usual introductory risk management learning program. It highlights the theory and practice of bank risk management for banking institutions with its principle-based content. I'd like to call on Mr. Tay K. Luan, Chief Executive of the AICB, to say a few words on the launch.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. For me, I can't refuse any opportunity to take advantage of any commercial break that I have to announce the changes that we are doing at AICB itself. Ladies and gentlemen, this launch of this Bank Risk Management qualification, in short is BRM, represents part of our strategic intent to broaden our suite of banking qualifications to meet the demands of diverse talent within the industry itself, and not just the bank, but within the financial services industry. BRM is a result of a very successful and excellent partnership with the Ateneo Bankers Association of Philippines Institute of Banking. The contents are designed and developed in consultation with industries, and is developed by industry for industry. The contents are principle-based and relevant to anyone, whether you are in management or whether you are in specialist roles across the FSI. This includes the market risk specialist, operational risk, liquidity risk, enterprise risk, regulatory and compliance risk, and internal audit as well, Mr. Tien. BLM is designed at intermediate level, and the reason is very simple. We need people to have adequate working experience and exposure to understand the concepts as well as the principles. There's only one level, and this level is at intermediate level, organized at 2 stages. The examinations is made up of multiple choice or essays, and these 2 levels are Module 1 comprised of independent MCQs, which is the multiple choice questions. The Module 2 is based on a case studies approach. But you must have a minimum of 3 to 5 years of work experience, and both, as I've said, comprises of 1, the principles, 2, the applications. The learning outcomes are broad understanding that enables immediate understanding of the respective roles and with an aim to improve performance in your workplace. The contents are universally based. BLM comes with study texts and past cards, and it has excellent support from the Bank Risk Forum, comprising of the chief risk officers in the industries, which are committed to make this as a standard requirement to all risk people from now onwards in their demanding and very successful roles within the industry. We certainly look forward to all your support, and I'd like to close before that, to acknowledge the following people for their immense contributions. First and foremost, I want to say my thanks and gratitude to the following people. We begin with the person who had been working very closely with us in the content development and design, and he is Philip T, who comes from the Ateneo Bankers Association of Philippines Institute of Banking, and he is with us at this present moment. Not forgetting too the list of members who form part of our curriculum working committee, and this comprises of Dr. John Lee, who is a CRO from Maybank, Mr. Nigel Denby from MBank, Mr. Eddie Chung, who is with the Bank of China, Suresh Raman from Citibank, Eckhart Kona from PwC, and I hope he's still here, and of course Dr. Vijay from the Asian Banking School. May I therefore invite our chairman, Tan Sri Asman Hashim, to come on stage for us to help us launch formally this qualification. Followed closely and accompanied by the following people who are available, Mr. Philip T, and also Mr. Eckhart. Unfortunately, Dr. John Lee, Nigel and Eddie and Suresh could not come with us, but they will be with us at the later stage of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tay. Thank you, Tan Sri. Thank you, Mr. T. Tan Sri, could we ask you to come on stage once again? We'd now like to take a moment to show our appreciation to all sponsors and supporting organizations who have contributed toward making today's conference a success. Once you're on stage to accept your token of appreciation, please stay on stage so we can take a group photo at the end of this. I'd like to call upon the representative Datin Mornefairos Binti Othman, Executive Vice President, Head of Group Organizational Learning, Group Human Capital at Maybank, who is our main sponsor, to come on stage to receive this token of appreciation. Thank you, Datin Mornefairos. Now, please welcome Enchik Mohammed Zamri Mohammed Ishak, CEO of Credit Guarantee Corporation Malaysia Berhad, who is our silver sponsor to receive this token. Thank you, Enchik Mohammed Zamri. We have a number of bronze sponsors this year. Please welcome Enchik Ekwan Mokzani Mohammed, CEO of Ambak Islamic Ambak Group, to receive this token of appreciation. Ms. Lee Yok-kyo, Executive Director of Afin Holdings PLC, to receive this token of appreciation. Sheikh Aiza Azreen Ahmad, Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer from Bank Rakyat, to receive the token. Mr. Azizi Ali, Senior Vice President, Islamic Business from Chagamas, to receive the token of appreciation. We would also like to thank our supporting partners today on their continuous support. We would like to call Mr. Mahendra Gursahani, CEO of Standard Chartered Malaysia Berhad, to receive this token. Enchik Mohammed Izazi Ismail, General Manager, Insurance Risk Assessment and Monitoring from Perbandhan Insurance Deposit Malaysia, to receive the token. I'd like to call upon our supporting organizations to receive a token of appreciation. Firstly, Dr. Raymond Madden, CEO of the Asian Institute of Finance. Next, Enchik Azman Hisham Chedoy, CEO of Securities Industry Development Corporation. Next, please welcome Ms. Michelle Lee, Senior Manager, Operations and Refinement of Association of Banks Malaysia. Ms. Pureen Teo, Assistant General Manager from Malaysia Investment Banking Association. Mr. Ranganathan Narasingham, Governor from Institute of Internal Auditors, Malaysia. And last but certainly not least, Mr. James Drummond, Vice President at Emerio. Thank you all for making today a success. Thanks once again. And while this is taking place, we'd like to thank two of the sponsors who are not able to make it today. First is the Human Resources Development Fund and The Edge. So we'd like to thank both of them for their support as well. Okay, now we're ready. We're ready to start the speeches and the conferences and all of the special guests. And it gives me great pleasure to invite our speaker for the special address, Dr. Zhao Chenghui, Chief Country Risk Analyst of the Export-Import Bank of China, onto the stage. Dr. Zhao?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It's an impressive audience here, I must say, I think you will enjoy me quizzing Dr. Zhao on some interesting and hopefully pertinent topics. As you just heard, this is a time of unprecedented change and challenge for the industry. It's a time that is fraught with difficulties. I'm sure many of you will have heard of the announcement by Standard Chartered to reduce their workforce substantially. And who better to comment or to speak about those challenges than a veteran of many a campaign, many a crisis, Dr. Zhao. Dr. Zhao is a manager at the Export-Import Bank of China, an important player in the industry. He's an expert in geopolitics, in international security, on monetary regimes globally, and most importantly, country risk assessment. Very impressively to me, he's a designer of China's very successful strategy and engagement in Africa, and a thought leader in the Chinese political establishment. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Zhao here. Dr. Zhao, the first question, and maybe let's start with something relatively broad, is what is the future of banking, or what do you see as the future of banking in society and the future of banking generally?
That's a very tough question, I should say. Obviously, the traditional banking, or traditional commercial banking at least, after the 2008 US and European crisis has really been changed dramatically. It's been changing in such a sweeping manner that we can say safely. The most big names that we are all here familiar with, in particular those in Europe, are still either struggling very hard or still supported strongly by their respective governments. And many of them are either withdrawing from their traditional markets or just ceased operation, like the very famous player Royal Bank of Scotland. And we can also see many players in Germany, the so-called largest and most dynamic economy in Europe, are also losing money. And that is why we can see the banking in its traditional disciplines are really in a great period of evolution. And in this period, another phenomenon that we can see is that the sort of so-called internet banking, or banking that without the normal portfolios or even a branch presence that are really coming to stream. And for that reason, we see many players in China, in Africa, predominantly are actually leading the way in the new banking. If anybody has any doubt that an African bank or banks in Africa are still left behind, that is really something you got to update yourself. Because telephone banking, or those what we call cell banking, is probably most developed in countries, in many countries across Africa, and probably the most prominent place is actually Kenya. And surprisingly, countries like Angola is also one of the pioneers in the cell phone banking. We can also see the diversification of those major players in North America, in Europe, and the other developed markets are in their very dismal period of timing. And that is why the real economies in the developed world is not really heading toward the healthier, steadier, and therefore more consistent development. At least they are not performing to the basic function of support of the real economy. Probably something in the embryo that we can see the financial services industry are actually dropping, in many cases, some of their branch representation. And the so-called Internet Plus, as we call it in China, or internet banking, is really playing the sort of role that is dividing the banking industry in China and also leading the way into possibly a volatile but a new, I would say brand new era for commercial banking.
On that note, what are the key risk priorities for the Export-Import Bank, and perhaps in a slightly more light-hearted manner, what keeps you up at night?
For China Exim Bank, the story can be quite different, because in many cases we are almost totally project-based. So the operations, as I said earlier, actively staying in countries that are more than 170 different markets. And that is why you know, the bank pays much more attention always to country risks. But the country risk is so important and so dynamic an area that for institutions like us, the so-called export credit agencies or overseas development agencies really got to base many of their business standards on the gauges of country risks. But for commercial banks, that can be a very different thing. It's simple because for a commercial bank, you tend to operate much local content, and therefore you would take deposit locally and also give out loans in the same manner. Therefore, the sort of connectivity with the local market is really bearing a different discipline that institutions like China Exim Bank would therefore regard it very differently in terms of risk assessment, risk appetite, and business decision thereon.
Okay. Stepping away from risks and looking at investments, investment priorities, I think many of those attending here tonight or today are either doing business in China directly or have clients, important clients, doing business in China. What advice would you offer them as far as perhaps China's continuing development, China's investment priorities?
Okay, I guess we can say you are dealing with the single largest market here in Asia, and that's to say China by far is the most important importer, and therefore the creation of the market demand would be still in high speed of increase. Many statistics show that in the next 5 years, the Chinese market will be possibly creating something like 4 trillion plus new demand. And that's to say the additional demand in China is still on the rise. And therefore, the market out there in China is ever enlarging to many expectations of the manufacturers, trading partners with their Chinese counterparties. On the other hand, China, I think in the next 5 to 8 years, become the largest investor in this part of the world. And that can also bring out more trade and investment opportunities for this region and also for the partners in between China and ASEAN countries, for instance. But in the meantime, China will be one of the major drivers in creating new market realities not only in the virtual sense that the the so-called Internet Plus things, and therefore more business models will be in place, and more opportunities therefore will follow. And for the physical sense, I think China is really developing more capacities in countries all across Africa, many countries in Asia and Latin America. These are not only to boost or with China's investment in terms of infrastructure, but also the new modes of production, transport, other sort of logistics that will support the ongoing business activities through China's Belts and Roads initiatives. So for every reason, I think we should be confident that the business ties in between China and other countries would be just strengthened for the years to come.
Okay, thank you. We'll return to the topic of China in a moment, but I couldn't help notice that you mentioned infrastructure twice. Is infrastructure a key priority for China? Should it be a key priority for regional governments as well?
In terms of economic benefit, we can see clearly that one of the major differences that we can draw almost immediately in a certain country is that the gorge of its infrastructure development level. And if a country enjoys better or higher infrastructure level, therefore the well-being of that community or that whole country will be just in the benefit that other peer countries might not necessarily enjoy. That is exactly the reason that we can see many countries in Africa, for instance, just so much lack of the necessary infrastructure support, and therefore their level of education, health, even employment activities are so low. Infrastructure, in other cases, can be a real driver to boost the economic activities. And therefore, infrastructure itself can be regarded as a very dynamic production activity. I think the third thing that we got to take heed is that infrastructure is probably the only way for the efficient connectivity in between different countries. So the cross-border business activities, to a great extent, are based on the feasibility and availability of infrastructure. So that is why we think we should use the abundant international reserves that are denominated in the US dollars to beef up the efforts in the area of infrastructure, not only within China, but also on a global sense. And therefore, infrastructure would be one of the major or key areas that the Chinese companies will make from now and the foreseeable future.
In other words, infrastructure development drives investment, investment drives infrastructure development, and it's a virtuous circle of sort that leads to well-being of the average citizen.
Oh yeah. See, the infrastructure, of course, in many cases, would take long, heavy, and also big money, right?
Yes, yes.
And the return, or the expected return in pure money sense can be huge. But the investors got to be more patient and would take the creative way of making the new sort of business ventures for two reasons. First, they got to try to recover the cost occurred in whatever projects in the infrastructure area. And secondly, that infrastructure to be in place got to be fully integrated into the local community so that it can provide the expected benefit. Only that way can infrastructure play the needed role that not only to boost the economic activities, but also to interconnect, people from different lands. That is also why infrastructure in that way can be the pioneering projects to pave the way for new possibilities of business endeavors.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's. I fully agree. It's a long-term rather than a short-term play. Okay. Let's speak about the Chinese currency, about the renminbi. What are China's ambitions for the currency? I think many here in the audience would be interested in your views on that.
Our money, renminbi, is really at the verge of playing a much more versatile role in terms of international settlement, financial assets, and even the reserve currency. Functions like this are actually natural development for not only the currency natural appreciation, but also based mostly on the strengths of the partnership that China has forged with its many trading partners worldwide for years. Right now, China is already the largest trading nation in the world. Therefore, the currency would consequently follow to play the sort of role that would support or facilitate easier transactions of different flows of international trade in terms of goods and services. And also, the renminbi can also be regarded as a sort of asset, financial asset, that you can trade, for instance, in Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, Sydney, Tokyo, Hong Kong, whatever, to register the real valuation of your assets. I think the more important one, and therefore the inclinationary sort of a goal, would be the function of international reserve. For that function to be in place, we need some institutional capacity. For instance, the IMF
Yes.
basket of currencies, that will be a process of legality, right?
Yes, yes.
And therefore, the sort of mechanisms like the sweeping or swapping arrangement between the Chinese Central Bank, which is the People's Bank of China, with many other central banks in ASEAN countries and in many other countries all over the world. And then after that, I think we need domestic sort of a reorientation in terms of new laws, new regulatory framework, and new policies in support of the internationalization to go in a proper and also sustainable manner.
Okay. Thank you very much. You've touched on regulation, and I wasn't really going to go there, but and please forgive me. But China's regulatory landscape does pose a serious problem for many a business out there. You implied that changes are expected there. Are those changes going to be sweeping? Are they going to be gradual? Can you shed any more light on this?
I would say, or I would hope that these sort of changes would be in a gradual, more incremental way, so that the people working in the regulatory institutions, after all, are also people. And they need more time to learn and to readjust themselves. And the learning curve can be steep
Yes.
for a certain period of time. But that cannot be sustainable, if the changes are too abrupt and too much and too sweeping. You obviously need time and those sort of wisdom that you gain from the learning experience to digest, to adjust, and also to reorient, people-wise, and also the institutional, and also the framework-wise. That's to say, changes for some time would be very quick. But then after that, there should be some more time to allow the sort of leisurely ideas or new conceptions to be seeped into the minds of many, not only in the regulatory bodies, but also in the the market players,
The institutions. Yes.
and again, another reason is that China is a new player, relatively new player in the international arena. I think we shouldn't be in a hurry, to get ourselves in too much in the limelight.
In other words, China's views are long-term views. They're long-term plans. And while you see the need for change, you don't want that change to be revolutionary, but rather evolutionary, to use that phrase.
For some new measures or new policies adopted for the new reforms, that can be drastic. But the policy philosophy or the sort of strategic thinking in terms of mapping out and also paving the way for the new system should be really in a, as I said, leisurely manner, and therefore you have more time to think about it and to think it through, to think it out.
So again, maybe a little bit of an unfair question, but do we have that time? Are you concerned about China's slowing growth? Are you going to be under pressure to act more quickly as a result of that?
No, absolutely not. On the contrary, the slowing down of the economy is really the sort of a new basis that we can avail ourselves in terms of new policy projections and also new framework designing and implementation, particularly in terms of the Chinese yuan regimes. I think we need at least one generation to make that thing, more or less robust, smooth, but also sustainable growth point for not only the Chinese economy, but also for the transitional dynamics in all the countries that are trading and doing business with China.
Mhm.
So we actually should be extremely patient
Mhm.
in moving away from what we are now.
Mhm. Mhm. I was going to say that that sounds like a very patient, long-term view, which seems to be the theme of this conversation. Maybe zeroing in on specific country relationships. What about China and Malaysia? I know you touched upon this very briefly about imports, but how do you view that relationship, especially from the perspective of country risk, from the perspective of the relationship between two important trade partners?
Well, it's too apparent and natural that Malaysia is one of the biggest growth markets in Asia and also on the world level. The economy here has those fundamentals, good health, and the public and private consumption are still on the go, and the trading potential with China and other ASEAN countries are still there, way high to be tapped, and therefore it's just too natural that the economy here will grow for the years down the road. That said, the macro economic environment got to be based on a more steadier and more sort of accommodating ground. And to put it more simply, the country can be more open, can have more flexible policies in terms of customs and labor policies. Then I think Malaysia is still a good place to be in business in every sector. And China itself plays a great premium on the development of a stronger ties with Malaysia. And many Chinese companies are so enthusiastic in coming to this place for manufacturing, services, banking, infrastructure, virtually in all sectors across the board. So we have every reason to believe that China would develop a stronger relationship with Malaysia.
And you mentioned ASEAN. I know that there will be a major summit here at the end of November. How do you view that community? Is it an important one? Is it something that's completely irrelevant as far as China is concerned?
I think for the ASEAN countries as a whole, they can have much larger capacity for production, consumption, and the ongoing trading, investment activities. That's for sure. But the intra-country trade and investment can also be geared up if the connectivity capacity is on the rise. That's to say, infrastructure in this regard would be a key for more swifter and better flows of people, funds, information, goods and services. But on the other hand, you see, the ASEAN architecture is not that similar to EU, European Union.
I was wondering whether you would draw that parallel.
See, even the community can be in place as planned, say, late this year or next year. But the ultimate goal for ASEAN is still dubious. Will it be an integrated market only? Will it be a sort of political and therefore security community? And how ASEAN will place itself in the new era of new international banking, in particular, the world that we are living in is changing, and changing so fast. We can say right now, Asia, or at least Asia Pacific, is already the center for economic activities. And also the center for international security. So in this case, leaders as well as many civilians got to think about it, how ASEAN will play its appropriate role to not only accommodate the changes that are coming along, but also to anchor itself in the drastically evolving international climate. That is why I think ASEAN is a sort of a entity that are still need crystallized. To crystallize
Yes.
its goal, long-term goal.
Yes.
For a more tangible, apparent, and therefore reliable international player.
Right. Okay. That's very interesting. So in other words, what is the eventual outcome that ASEAN should be shooting for or aiming for at this stage? What are its objectives? You mentioned security, and obviously the incidents in the Sea of China are a source of worry and are perceived by many as a flashpoint for global conflict. What are your views on this, and does ASEAN have a role to play here?
Again, it's fair to presume that each country in this region would have its own right, to activate the sort of economic functions, and also as an international player, it has its own territory obligations. The thing pertinent to the South China Sea is so complex because of the non-regional players are making too much noises, and that is really making the whole picture more, I would say, interrogative, or it's been more difficult to maneuver and move about. And many would say China might have already reached a little bit too far in terms of the territorial claims. But I would say that, those claims over the same sort of island or territorial waters can be traced many decades ago, even many centuries ago. The Chinese position in this regard is that those acclaimed areas are traditionally Chinese territorial waters, and the argument based on that has been that historically it was the Chinese fishermen that already worked along that area, and the ancient Chinese authorities were already in, let's say, the sort of administrative links with those island or territorial waters. But the thing became so stickingly difficult for the last decade or so is because China itself sometimes are not persistent in its policies, or not well, I wouldn't use the word strong enough. But they should be more coherent in terms of policy allocations and also the territorial administration. But right now, I really don't think matters of this kind would be real turbulent factor that would spoil the economic and other cooperations between China and the relative countries. I think it's also fair to notice that the most ultimate intention of the Chinese claims is that we can coexist. We can use that territorial areas for the benefit of every nation. But on terms of sovereignty, that is a different issue. But for whatever reason, it should be dealt with peacefully, gradually, and also that hopefully can create more and better relationship working with each other.
In other words, China is willing to negotiate or speak about this with regional players, but would prefer for the U.S., to put it crudely, to butt out of what is a regional concern.
Well, the U.S. Is a different story. As I said, it's a non-regional player. Therefore, we don't think there are any legal obligations or rights that are claimed like what the Pentagon or the Obama administration said. And naturally, most of these turbulent or troubled water splashes are made by the Americans. But I don't think China will retreat, particularly to confront the United States.
Okay.
But for China and other countries, the local ASEAN member countries, I think we can deal with that in a amicable, peaceful manner.
I see. Yeah, I understand. But just to, and I don't wish to challenge you, how you strike me as a very pragmatic person. To what extent is it about sovereignty and history, and to what extent is it about natural resources and access to those?
You mean the South China Sea?
Yes, yes.
Back in 1980s, the then Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping already put it very clearly that we can share those territorial waters or even islands, and see, but that policy is targeted toward the sort of coexistence in a peaceful way in terms of co-development. But then on, China itself forgot about it. We didn't put the necessary resources to do that. And in the meantime, other countries were so eager
to seize the opportunity.
To seize the time and seize the opportunity and seize those islands.
Fantastic. I see.
So that posed a serious question to China. Should we reclaim those islands by force? Should we do it just through amicable, peaceful negotiations? What if nothing occurred to our wish? And then, after that, the U.S. new policy coming along, the rebalancing scheme, right? And the non-regional powers are really playing a role in this area that make the whole game differently. But I wouldn't say the U.S. involvement would be a game changer. No, I don't really think so.
Okay, thank you. I see our time may be up.
And Dr. Zhao, we have about 10 minutes left. So I think since we've got Dr. Zhao here, maybe we could open up the floor to questions. And if some of you could find, pardon me, a microphone, if you have questions, please stand up and ask questions. Let me just start with a quick one while people get lined up. Dr. Zhao, China is Malaysia's largest trading partner. Malaysia also has key relationships with the Middle East. And we just saw, say, for example, an election with Turkey, and Malaysia has very tight relationships with Turkey. How do you see China and Malaysia working together to work, for example, on the Belt and Road Initiative through financial activities in that region?
Yes, that is a great area that we really should question ourselves honestly and seriously. See, every country would have its role to play for the better gains on the international stage. Now, for Malaysia, in the eyes of many Chinese, we think Malaysia is strategically located. It has vast natural resources. It has abundant skilled labor force, and also it has skillful and stewardship in terms of international leadership. And in many cases, we see Malaysia is having, a different voice, a voice that would uphold the goal of the ASEAN integrity, and also the immediate national interests of its peoples. So that's to say, Malaysia is endowed with so many different good qualities, and therefore, for China, this country would be one of the key points that we would like to work with, not only for the conventional trading investment activities or people-to-people interchanges. Now, the Belt and Roads Initiative in this particular regard would empower Malaysia with doubled national strength to deal with China and other countries in the neighboring areas. And if the two countries, China and Malaysia, can work in a more efficient collaborating way, then I think the GDP per capita of Malaysia and China will be both much boosted. And also the sort of wealth that we can create in terms of the material magnitude and also spiritual sphere can go hand in hand for a better Asia and better world.
Fantastic.
You know, we are almost in the sort of a different cultural history and also backgrounds. And therefore, we have many reasons, more reasons, every reason that we should work cohesively for the betterness of the peoples here in Malaysia, China, and other countries
Great.
In this community.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dr. Zhou. We have a question over here. Sir? Yes.
Thank-
Hi, my question is about how to mitigate risks and volatility of China, given that we know that China's economic growth is likely to slow down in the next few years, say like 6.5%. Well, seems like that. What I want to know is like, what would be the plan B? The plan B is like, what if it's not like what we planned? What if we have like rapid change of yuan internationalization or some policy changes in the US that would cause China's economic growth to be, say, hard landing? So we need plan B, like what Chinese saying is like 机货不如变货, changes run faster than plans. So we plan something, it may not come like that. My point is that what is the plan B for China's government in terms of policy changes, in terms of institutional changes? So we need to be prepared for ASEAN because in terms of high interconnection with trades and financial flows with China and ASEAN. So ASEAN will be having negative consequences on that. Thank you.
So how will China pass the stress test if you look back at yesterday's workshop, right? What's the plan B if China's growth slows faster than is expected?
Well, if I understand you correctly, I think for China itself, we really have an enlarging, growing domestic market to take care of in the first place. You see, the Belt and Roads Initiative can also be regarded as one of those guiding principles that would reshape China's domestic market, or to rationalize or to stream in the whole lot of China's policies for domestic and international arenas. The Chinese market itself is growing because the obvious urbanization, poverty, living, and then new technology for industries and even agriculture are taking shape very quickly. So we see the domestic demand is just so huge that it can support a growth of something like 6.5 to 7% on a per year basis. But for the next few years, you see the international demand in countries like North America and Europe might be dwindling. And that is a real risk for which the way that we can get ourselves prepared is to create more domestic demand, and also in tandem with the creation of new and bigger demands in countries in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. For all those efforts to be in place and to be active, we certainly need the macro scale sustainability. That is why the 13th five-year plan will be in place very soon. And for that plan to be interactive with countries like Malaysia and other ASEAN member countries, we think larger trading capacities, more investments, and better opportunities will be along the way.
Perfect. Dr. Zhao, thank you very much. Thank you for the amazing comment. I know we have other questions, but we have to move on for the break. I'm really sorry about that. But Dr. Zhao is here for the rest of the day, and he's also on the next panel. Thank you so much for your comments, Dr. Zhao, and your insight. Thomas, thank you so much for running an amazing panel. I really appreciate it. At this point, we're going to move to a short coffee break of 15 minutes in the foyer outside the ballroom. Please do return to the ballroom by 11:15 sharp. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you.